Get out if you can't pass the exam.
Helen, my son's wife, shouted these harsh words at her son Timothy. Timothy, who was kicked out, don't worry. We will make sure you find happiness with us. My name is Barbara. I live with my husband Jacob, who is about to retire. Our only son Nicholas has a wife and a middle school-aged son. Nicholas's wife, Helen, is stunningly beautiful. And she also has a prestigious career. She graduated from a top university, got a job at a top company, and then left when she got married. I often wondered how such an elite woman ended up meeting and marrying Nicholas. But she said, "He makes me feel at ease." Nicholas is a laid-back and modest man, for better or worse. Helen, who worked diligently, never slacked off in household chores or childcare. Our middle school grandson Timothy excels in his studies and aims to get into a prestigious private middle school. He must take after Helen rather than Nicholas. However, focusing only on studies must be stifling. I often invite him to come over to our place. But Helen always says,
"Barbara, he doesn't have time to slack off. If he takes a single day off from studying, he'll fall behind quickly."
Helen won't let us. But, he needs to take a break sometimes. Timothy is still a kid who needs to play, and overdoing it won't be effective.
What do you know, Barbara? I don't want him to end up like his father, who hasn't been successful.
Hey, she's talking about my son, It seems Nicholas is still as laid back as ever. And despite his son's stifling days, he doesn't seem to help. They come to our house at least for Christmas, but every time I see Timothy, his face looks gloomy.
Helen, why don't you let Timothy come over sometimes? Enough already! If you're going to be this persistent, we won't come anymore.
We only see them once a year, and now she's threatening to cut that off too? Nicholas, who always smiles foolishly, is not reliable. I can't help but sigh at Timothy's expressionless face, wondering if there's anything Jacob and I can do. Unfortunately, Timothy did not pass the entrance exam for his desired middle school. I felt a mix of disappointment and a bit of relief that things didn't go Helen's way. I went to Nicholas's house with a gift to console Timothy, but I was surprised.
What? Are you already studying again?
Timothy was sitting in the living room, facing his workbook. When he saw us, his face brightened up, but Helen's angry voice soon followed.
Get back to solving the next problem quickly.
Timothy's expression darkened again as he hurriedly returned his gaze to the workbook.
The entrance exam must have been tough. Don't you think he should take a break? Barbara, the battle for exams continues until he gets a job. Timothy didn't get into his desired middle school, so he needs to get into an even better high school. He doesn't have time to slack off.
Still, at least while we're here.
You're too lenient. Barbara, you're too soft. In today's world, such leniency won't get you anywhere.
Sigh.
I will make sure he walks the elite path, just like I did. As my son, he must become a great man. He can't afford to stumble over something like an entrance exam.
But failures are also necessary in life,
What? Failures? Don't make me laugh. Failures are the most unnecessary thing in life. I will ensure Timothy walks only the path of success.
I felt a strong sense of dislike to her. But I couldn't speak out strongly, so I could only exchange looks with Jacob. Holding the box of cake I had brought as a gift, I approached Timothy.
Timothy, you're doing great. How about taking a break and having some cake?
But just then,
I said don't interfere with him.
Helen's hand reached out, and the cake box flew through the air.
Oh!
The box fell to the floor in front of my surprised eyes. Of course, the cake inside was completely ruined.
Helen, what on earth are you doing? It's Barbara's fault for interfering. Timothy, as a punishment, do 5 more pages of the workbook.
Yes, Mom. Neither Jacob nor I could close our gaping mouths at Helen's harsh attitude and Timothy's submissive response. In the uncomfortable atmosphere, we headed home.
Is Timothy going to be okay?
Well, all we can do is watch over him. Sharing a troubled look, Jacob and I sighed again. By the time Timothy faced his high school entrance exams, we couldn't see him at all. Even when I called to ask how he was doing.
We're busy right now, so please don't call.
Helen's response was cold. Even when I called Nicholas, he just said,
I've left everything about Timothy to Helen.
Still the same. Once the exams are over, I'll make sure he has a lot of fun. One day, as I was pondering these thoughts, I received a call from Helen.
It's been a while. How is everyone?
I wanted to ask about Timothy, but what I got in return was a heavy sigh.
Ugh, that kid is absolutely useless. What? Just like his father. It seems my genes didn't get passed on at all. I'm so disappointed. What? What do you mean? He failed the entrance exam.
Apparently, Timothy didn't get into the first-choice high school that Helen had been desperate for.
But he got into his second choice, right? That's still a top-tier school, and it's impressive.
Even as I said that, it didn't resonate with Helen at all.
What's impressive about the second choice? It was just a backup. If he didn't get into the first choice, it means nothing. Honestly, I'm so disappointed in him. I wish I could get back all the time I spent raising him.
You don't have to say it like that.
I do have to say it. I wanted him to have a life without failure, like mine, but he's already leading a life of failure. I don't want to raise such a child anymore. What? What do you mean? This has nothing to do with you. Anyway, because of your lousy genes, Timothy failed his exam. You should apologize to me.
With that, she hung up the phone. Sigh. What a troublesome person. Letting out another sigh, I headed to the living room where Jacob was.
We might need to have a serious talk with her,
Jacob said, and I nodded. I was really worried about Timothy. I always thought Helen had a tough personality, but recently it's been especially bad. Jacob also seemed to feel that someone needed to confront her with some harsh truths, and he was ready to step up. I hoped this would improve the situation. But the situation took a sudden turn. A few days later, Timothy unexpectedly showed up at our house.
Timothy? What's wrong? Why are you here so suddenly?
I asked Timothy, who was biting his lip and not saying a word.
Timothy!
Ugh, sniff. Suddenly, he started to cry. Jacob and I were both taken aback. Seeing us flustered, he stammered out an explanation.
Mom told me to get out. What?
Apparently.
Get out from the house!
Helen had said. As Timothy cried and apologized.
Never come back!
Helen forced him out of the house.
I can't believe it! Is this true?
I was so angry that my vision turned red. I quickly called Nicholas.
What the hell are you doing?
First, I interrogated Nicholas.
Well, I left Timothy's matters to Helen.
And this is the result! I cut him off before he could finish. Truly. He was pathetic. As I was feeling exasperated, I heard Helen's voice from behind. Is Timothy over there?
Then just tell him never to come back. Helen, are you serious?
It seemed Nicholas had put the call on speakerphone. I could hear Helen's mocking laughter in response to my shock.
A pathetic son who can't even pass his exams has no place in our home. I'm going to have another child, and this time I'll raise them perfectly. So, we don't need that failure anymore. But, he's your son. If he were truly my son, he wouldn't fail. So, a failure like him isn't my son.
Hearing her voice over the speaker, Timothy looked at me with a pale face.
I'll send all of his belongings to you. What? Wait, are you serious? I don't joke about kicking my son out. If it's a bother, just send him to an orphanage or something. Anyway, that's that. Goodbye. Wait. What about Nicholas? Didn't he say anything?
Oh, he leaves everything to me and doesn't oppose me. He's a wonderful husband who respects and is kind to his wife. I sensed a smile in her tone just before the call ended.
She hung up. I can't believe it. This can't be happening.
I shouted, trying to call back, but someone stopped my hand. When I looked, he had placed his hand over mine.
Timothy?
It's okay, it's enough. Timothy muttered as if resigned, with a forced smile on his face. I'm not going back to that house. I don't want to go back. Not going back, not wanting to go back. Is there a middle schooler who says such things? What kind of parent makes their child say such things? I felt so sorry for him that my eyes filled with tears. I looked at Jacob. Jacob was also looking at me. Honey. Jacob nodded silently at my call. We both nodded and then looked at him.
Timothy, let's live with us.
What? Timothy looked at me in surprise. I returned his gaze straight into his eyes. I couldn't tell if the tears flowing from Timothy's eyes were from sadness or relief. But I vowed in my heart, I will absolutely make him happy. From that day on, Timothy began living with us.
So, you're going to take care of him? Since you decided this on your own, we won't be sending any support money. And obviously, we won't cover school expenses either. We don't need any of that.
I thought Helen might be at least a bit flustered when it came to Timothy moving in with us, but on the contrary, she seemed relieved.
Great. I feel so much better.
And Nicholas, as usual, was nonchalant. There was no way I would let Timothy go back to parents like that. The commute to his middle school was quite far, but fortunately, Jacob was still able to drive, which was a big help. The high school was closer to our house than Nicholas's. When I asked if he wanted to commute by bike, Timothy's eyes lit up.
I can ride a bike.
Apparently, Timothy, who had been deprived of play, had never even owned a bicycle. He eagerly practiced on the bicycle we hastily bought him, getting covered in scrapes, and by the time he started high school, he was riding it proficiently. He was an honest and considerate child. How could anyone have suppressed such a good kid? Initially, Timothy, who didn't even know how to play, was bewildered when he started high school, but he was blessed with good friends. Gradually, he opened up to those around him, and his smiles increased. The Timothy who once blankly solved problem sets under his mother's command was no more. It felt as though his youth had revitalized us, making us feel younger. Jacob, who had already retired, was now enthusiastically embracing his new purpose in life. He kept up energetically with him, who was full of youthful vigor, and seemed to have become more robust himself. One day, Timothy approached us with a serious expression.
I have something to talk about,
he said. Jacob and I exchanged glances, then sat down in the living room to hear what he had to say.
I've found something I want to do,
Timothy began. It seemed that through various experiences, he had discovered his passion. Jacob and I clapped our hands in joy, recognizing how wonderful this was.
But to pursue this career, there's something I need to study at university,
Timothy continued hesitantly. Ah, so that's it, he was worried about the costs. Indeed, our financial situation wasn't the best. Jacob was living on his pension, and Nicholas and Helen hadn't contributed a single cent, nor had they even kept in touch.
Don't worry, we have enough savings to send you to university,
Jacob reassured him. But
a child shouldn't worry about such things. Just focus on making your dreams come true,
Jacob insisted. Understanding Jacob's words, Timothy nodded firmly and said,
Thank you so much,
with deep gratitude. From that point on, Timothy studied diligently. Eventually, he was accepted into his first choice university.
Congratulations, Timothy.
I said.
Thank you, Granny.
He replied. A few years later, Timothy achieved his dream job. By the time he graduated from university, Jacob and I had become quite emotional and cried tears of joy. The days had been challenging, but they had truly shone since Timothy came to live with us. I felt that I had no regrets left, though I still wanted to stay healthy for as long as possible. Jacob and I were discussing what we should do next when it happened. They suddenly showed up.
Hey! Give Timothy back!
The ones who suddenly barged in were none other than Nicholas and his wife.
Oh my, it's been a while. You don't look like you've been well.
In just a few years, Nicholas and Helen had changed drastically. Their faces were gaunt, their clothes shabby, and they both looked utterly worn out. What on earth had happened to them?
Mom, help us!
Please, just give us something to eat. Nicholas and Helen each clung to me, pleading desperately. I let them in and made a simple pasta, which they devoured with startling speed.
Haven't you been eating?
We haven't had enough to eat. We're out of money.
Why?
The company went bankrupt due to the recession. The severance pay was meager. Unemployment benefits ran out quickly, and now we're jobless.
That's awful. You need to find new jobs soon. If we could, we wouldn't be in this mess.
Nicholas broke down in tears.
Didn't you save any money?
No. I was appalled. Saving for emergencies should be a given.
From the looks of it, it's just the two of you? You said something about having another child.
We couldn't. At least there wouldn't be another unfortunate grandchild like Timothy.
Helen, what about work? Huh? Why would I? There's no way I'm working. You always said you were an elite. Finding a job should be easy for you, right? Listen, I'm a wife. My role is to support my husband at home. Why should I have to work? As a couple, you're supposed to support and help each other. Nicholas is supposed to support me, not the other way around. I'm astonished. Shut up, I don't need your opinion. Where's our son? Where's Timothy?
Just as I was wondering what they wanted with Timothy, he walked in at the worst possible moment.
What? Dad, Mom. Timothy, you've grown into such a fine young man. You got a job, right?
Nicholas rushed towards the startled Timothy with a voracious energy. Helen, even more aggressively, grabbed Timothy's arm and shook him violently.
You've turned out so well. Wearing a suit means you got a job, right? Perfect timing, you can support your parents now. Wait a minute, what are you two saying? You abandoned Timothy, and now you come back and expect. Shut up, Mom! We're just claiming our rightful parental rights. It's a child's duty to take care of their parents. That's right, we raised you at least through middle school. You owe us for that.
Helen's self-righteous declaration made me bristle with indignation.
Now, wait a minute.
I began, but was cut off by a voice colder than an Arctic wind.
Are you kidding me?
Timothy's voice was like ice, and his gaze even colder as he stared at his parents.
You expect me to support you? Dad, what happened to your job?
Timothy asked. I lost it. Nicholas stammered.
And Mom, what are you doing?
Timothy continued.
I'm supporting him and keeping the house in order.
Helen started.
Oh, give me a break. If your husband is struggling, the wife should step up. What's with this former elite nonsense? Too good to get a job now?
His tone was cutting.
What did you say? Timothy, how dare you speak to your mother like that?
Helen began to retort, but Timothy cut her off.
What? You are just a crap.
He snapped.
Eek!
Helen fell off her chair in shock. She had clearly never seen Timothy stand up to her like this.
What's with that attitude? I knew it was a mistake leaving you with Barbara and Jacob. You've turned out rotten. Probably didn't even do well at that high school, ended up working at some small company, huh? Or maybe you're unemployed, just wearing that suit for job interviews? Hilarious. I was on the elite track, graduated from a top university, joined a top company, but you're just a failure.
Helen sneered. I'm working at Smith Corporation. Timothy interrupted.
Wah!
Helen's face froze. Smith Corporation was an even more prestigious company than the one Helen had worked for.
Don't lie to me. There's no way a high school graduate.
Helen began, but Timothy cut her off again.
Who said I graduated only from high school? I graduated from University of Pennsylvania before getting this job. What? That's an elite university.
Helen's shock was palpable. Timothy's voice turned even colder as he addressed his parents.
I owe everything to Grandpa and Granny who raised me with love. If I'm going to repay anyone, it's them, not you. What are you saying? I helped you get into that high school.
Helen protested.
Sure, but I got in because I worked hard.
Timothy retorted.
How dare you, you insolent brat!
Helen screamed, looking like she was about to lunge at him. But before she could,
that's enough!
Jacob's voice boomed through the room.
You guys are unbelievably selfish. You abandoned your responsibilities, and now you expect us to take care of you? Have you even thought about what you did? Do you really think you deserve any kind of gratitude?
Nicholas and Helen fell silent.
What goes around comes around, and your parenting has shown its results. If you stay here any longer, I'm calling the police. The police? Dad, that's too much. If you don't want that, then get out. And don't ever come back. Wait a minute, I didn't do anything wrong. You are the main culprit here. What?
The mention of the police made Nicholas panic. Helen, still claiming her innocence, was also pushed out by Jacob's determination. After that, the whereabouts of Nicholas and Helen were unknown. Unable to find stable jobs, they piled up debts and eventually had their house foreclosed. Helen, despite her elite background, failed to secure a job due to a long gap in her resume. Her pride made her apply only to top companies, and naturally, she got rejected. They came crying back to us again, but my husband and I, along with Timothy, refused to help them. Homeless and destitute, they disappeared somewhere. Meanwhile, Timothy is thriving every day. He is thoroughly enjoying the freedom to pursue his passions. My husband and I have aged, but we still feel there's much more to life. We often laugh together, saying we need to stay strong until we see Timothy's children.
Hurry up and open it. It's heavy.
Sharon dropped the garbage bag at the entrance and bent over, trying to catch her breath.
If it's that hard for you, you don't have to bring it all the way here.
When I said that, Sharon gave me a haughty look.
Disposing of trash costs money. If I can get rid of it at your place, it's cheaper. If you want me to take it back, just give it to me. Here.
She thrust her hand forward, gesturing impatiently. I tried desperately to lift the garbage bag, but my restricted body couldn't manage it. Only a groan of frustration escaped my lips. Sharon just watched me with a smirk.
At this rate, it'll take you all night.
I'm leaving now.
This is a waste of time.
With that, Sharon left me standing there. I was at a loss, realizing I couldn't move the garbage bag from the entrance. If it stayed there, it would be in the way, and I wouldn't be able to get outside. I put all my strength into moving the bag with both arms. Finally, it moved a little. Feeling a glimmer of hope, I pulled harder, but the bag, already heavy, scraped against the floor and tore open. Caught off guard, I banged my arm hard against the cupboard.
Ouch! I've had enough!
Clutching my arm, I looked at the garbage spilled all over the entrance. I realized I could have just divided the contents into smaller bags instead of dragging the whole thing. As I began picking up the trash, I noticed something strange.
Could it be?
Seeing what was in the bag, I understood Sharon's true intention. Tears began to flow from my eyes naturally. My name is Verity. Now, I am sitting at a desk in a dim room at dusk, making handmade jewelry. The only sounds are the tinkling of the jewelry and the ticking of the clock. Outside, I can faintly hear the cheerful voices of children playing.
That's enough for today.
Though the work was not finished, my eyes were blurred, and my fingers wouldn't move as they should. If I push myself too hard, I'll make mistakes and have to start over. So, even if I feel I can do more, it's wise to stop. When I put down the tools, I realized for the first time that the room had gotten dark.
Oh, it's already this late.
I muttered, knowing no one in the house would respond. Feeling a slight loneliness, I maneuvered my wheelchair to turn on the light switch. As the room lit up, I saw the black garbage bags piled in the corner. But I didn't want to look at them.
What should I make for dinner tonight?
Quickly putting away my tools, I went to the kitchen to start preparing dinner. Outside, I could still hear the children's cheerful voices. As I chopped vegetables, tears suddenly fell from my eyes. Why do I have to live such a miserable life? As I thought this, the tears wouldn't stop, falling onto the cabbage on the cutting board. My current condition is due to a car accident over 20 years ago. Since then, I've been in and out of hospitals, living in a wheelchair. Because of that, I couldn't take proper care of my son, Zeph. My husband, Jake, tried his best, but he was busy with work, so Zeph was often left alone. I can never forget the sight of him, a little boy, sitting forlornly in the middle of a dark room when Jake and I came home late at night. I truly feel sorry for Zeph. The emotional scars he suffered greatly affected our lives. He had become a delinquent. He ignored both Jake and me, constantly fighting with his classmates, leading to repeated calls from the school. Still, I tried to stay positive, hoping that one day I could reconcile with Zeph. To help supplement Jake's income, I started making jewelry from home. However, Zeph not only didn't reform, but he also started demanding money and even became physically abusive towards me. Jake's collapse was likely due to the stress from work and family. Despite everything, he was always worried about Zeph, right up until he was gone. Perhaps feeling some sense of responsibility, Zeph married his girlfriend Sharon and moved out soon after. All I was left with was an overly spacious house and my jewelry making. I occasionally sold them at flea markets, which allowed me to interact with the neighbors. Talking to people only happened during those moments. As I reminisced and cried about the past, the doorbell rang. Given the time, it had to be her. I quickly wiped my tears and hurried to the door as fast as I could. However, the person on the other side was impatiently knocking. Hold on a minute. I'm opening it now. As soon as I unlocked the door, my son's wife, Sharon, barged in with an angry huff. She was wearing a suit, likely coming straight from work, and was holding a black garbage bag in her hand. The bag seemed full, its opening tightly secured.
Why didn't you open the door sooner? You're so slow.
Immediately upon entering, Sharon started yelling at me, her face flushed with anger.
I'm not here for fun, you know. I have to check on Verity, so I came. I'm sorry, but it's hard to move quickly in a wheelchair. Stop making excuses. It's your lack of exercise. Here, take this garbage out. It'll be good exercise for you.
With that, she attempted to throw the garbage bag into the room.
Please stop. It's really difficult with my legs like this. The house will be buried in garbage at this rate.
Desperately, I stretched out my arms to stop her from throwing the bag. But despite my efforts, the bag left her hand, arcing through the air before hitting the floor. Why would she do something so cruel? Tears I thought I had wiped away started to fall again, but I kept my head down, not wanting Sharon to see. Sharon bent down.
Crying won't get you any help. You're not a child, so pull yourself together.
And whispered. I gritted my teeth in frustration, but with my physical limitations, I couldn't fight back. Sharon knew this too well. She laughed mockingly and patted my shoulder in a seemingly friendly manner.
You probably don't have anything to offer since you're so slow. It's boring here, so I'm leaving.
She opened the door to leave but suddenly turned back, looking at me seriously.
I'll be back. That garbage isn't sorted, so make sure Verity does it. Otherwise, you'll get in trouble, understand?
I was too angry to respond. As soon as the door closed, I quickly locked it. Since Jake passed away, Sharon has been coming to my house every day. It's not out of kindness to check on me. She comes to hurl insults and, lately, to throw garbage at me. I don't know what's in those bags, but they're heavy, and I can't bring myself to take them outside. Picking up the bag from the floor, I added it to the pile in the corner of the room. At this point, I didn't care about anything anymore. If I was going to spend my old age in loneliness, I might as well be buried in garbage and leave this world. After I'm gone, the neighbors will be shocked to see this mess. And Sharon's actions will be exposed. For me, it was the only way to resist, and in a way, it had become something I looked forward to.
Why did he marry such a woman?
Still, my frustration wouldn't go away, so I decided to call Zeph. I'll get him to talk to Sharon. Luckily, Zeph answered right away.
What's up? Are you feeling sick or something? No, it's not that. Sharon's been awful to me again.
Then, I started detailing everything that had happened. But he didn't listen to the end. I was still talking.
You're going on and on. Basically, you don't like Sharon, right? Just say that from the start instead of rambling.
When he interrupted roughly. Why are you being so mean?
I'm having a hard time too. Your hard time isn't my problem. Sharon treats me well. You must have done something to piss her off, right? I didn't do anything. Don't just make stuff up.
I knew my voice was turning tearful in my desperation. I had no one else to rely on, so I wanted Zeph to be my only ally. However, from his past experiences, Zeph didn't see me as his mother. He probably thought it was too convenient for me to cry to him now. But even though Sharon's actions troubled me deeply, he wouldn't even listen.
Anyway, I'm busy. You must have too much time on your hands, bothering Sharon. Reflect on your own behavior before complaining to me. That's so cruel, so unfair. What's so unfair? You never cared about me, only yourself. Serves you right.
Then Zeph laughed loudly. His laugh pierced my ears like sharp nails. After laughing for a while, he hung up. The room was already enveloped in the darkness of night. I need to turn on the lights, I need to make dinner. I thought this in my head, but Zeph's words and Sharon's actions hurt so much that I couldn't bring myself to do anything. I'd rather. Just as I thought that, a sharp pain shot through my chest as if my throat was closing up. I must stop thinking such foolish thoughts. I maneuvered my wheelchair to turn on the lights, plated the chopped cabbage, and heated up frozen fried chicken to place beside it. No matter how hard it is, no matter the cruel words thrown at me, I have to live. A few days passed after that. Sharon continued to come at the same time, saying nasty things and throwing trash bags into my room. I silently piled them in the corner, but it seemed they had reached their limit. Some of the pile had collapsed, starting to take over the room. I had stubbornly refused to throw out the trash, but now that the room was filling up, the disgust was winning. Apparently, a neighbor had seen Sharon's behavior. When I was outside, they approached and gently rubbed my back.
I know you've been spoken to harshly. I didn't want to interfere, but if you need anything, please tell me. Thank you. I might ask for help someday.
After that conversation, I parted ways with my neighbor, but I was genuinely happy. I had believed that I had no one on my side. Feeling a bit more confident, I decided to ask Sharon to take her trash back. Around 6 p.m., Sharon arrived at my house. As usual, she was dressed in her suit, but the garbage bag she was holding was much larger than usual. It seemed she had a hard time bringing it over, as her face was red and she was breathing heavily.
Hurry up and open it, it's heavy.
Sharon dropped the garbage bag at the entrance and bent over to catch her breath.
If it's that hard, you didn't have to bring it over.
When I said that, Sharon glared at me from beneath her brows.
You don't get it. It costs money to dispose of trash. If I can get rid of it at Verity's place, it saves money. My house isn't a dump. Take it back.
I tried to lift the garbage bag off the floor, but it was too heavy to move.
What's inside this? It won't budge at all.
I tried to pull it, but my frail body couldn't manage it.
If you really want me to take it back, hand it over.
Come on. Sharon reached out her hand and moved it impatiently. I struggled to lift the garbage bag, but my weak body couldn't do it. Only a helpless groan escaped my mouth. Sharon just watched and laughed at my efforts.
Looks like it would take all night. I'm leaving. This is a waste of my time.
With that, Sharon left, leaving me with the garbage bag I couldn't move. I was at a loss, unable to move the bag from the entrance. If it stayed there, it would block my way out. What if there was a fire? I wouldn't be able to escape. Desperately, I put all my strength into moving the garbage bag. Finally, it moved a little. Seeing a glimmer of hope, I pulled the bag harder, but the combination of its weight and the friction against the floor caused the bag to tear. Unexpectedly, I ended up hitting my arm hard against the cabinet. Ouch, I hate this. Holding my arm, I looked at the contents scattered across the entrance.
Why didn't I think to just take out the items one by one?
As I picked up the trash, I noticed something strange.
No way, is this?
I picked it up and found it was a retort pouch of curry. And the pouch wasn't even opened.
What does this mean? Did Sharon put this in the garbage by mistake?
I was engrossed as I tore the bag open to check the contents. It wasn't just curry, there were pasta ingredients and retort foods stuffed inside. No, it wasn't just retort foods, there were also dried pasta, canned fish, and even cash wrapped in a plastic bag.
Why are these things in here?
Leaving the bag at the entrance, I went back inside and opened the piled up garbage bags one by one. Sure enough, there was no garbage at all. All of them were filled with retort foods, canned goods, non-perishable foods, and cash. I stood there, bewildered, not understanding what was happening. With all the bags containing the same things, it couldn't be a mistake. But why did she choose such a roundabout way to hand it over? I would have to ask her directly to understand. I cleaned up the scattered items in the entrance and waited for the next day to come. And indeed, Sharon came at the same time the next day. I made no mention of it and simply motioned for her to come into the room. Sharon hesitated for a moment, lowering her eyes, but then quickly looked up and followed me into the room. She looked around the piles of garbage bags in the room with a blank expression.
Did you really think it was all garbage and never looked inside? I'm sorry, I didn't realize you were trying to help me.
Sharon said nothing, just looked at me, then suddenly twisted her face and covered it with both hands, starting to cry.
Verity, I'm so sorry for saying such terrible things. It's okay. You must have your reasons, right? Tell me everything.
With tears, Sharon began to explain.
Actually, all of this was under his orders.
Zeph's?
Why would he do such a thing?
It was true Zeph hated me, but I couldn't believe he would go this far.
Zeph is in financial trouble.
In financial trouble? That can't be true. I found it hard to believe Zeph was struggling financially. When Jake passed away, he left a significant inheritance. Zeph had received the majority of that inheritance. I, too, had hoped to rely on that inheritance due to my physical limitations. But because I felt guilty for leaving him lonely, I didn't complain about Zeph taking the inheritance. Yet, the idea that it wasn't enough seemed strange. When I pointed this out to Sharon, she hung her head.
It's for business. Zeph started a cafe to launch his business.
I hadn't heard about it, but apparently, Zeph had started a business a few years ago. With his charming exterior, he managed to get approvals from officials and banks to open the shop. But things didn't go as planned, and the business failed. Zeph, now deep in debt, turned his eyes to my inheritance.
I refused at first. Yes, I had heard about you from Zeph. I knew he hated you. But I couldn't bring myself to do something so cruel to someone with disabilities.
Sharon sat on the floor, hugging herself as if to shield herself from the world.
Yet you had no choice but to do it.
Sharon nodded and lifted her shirt to show her bare back. Seeing it made me gasp. There were painful-looking bruises clearly visible.
He pretends to be kind when talking to people outside, but he was cruel to me.
Sharon put her shirt back down.
He didn't trust me either. He ordered me to document everything I did to you. And still, you resisted by mixing in not garbage, but ready-to-eat meals.
Sharon shook her head sadly at my words.
That's part of it, but there's more. Zeph is using me to corner you. But he's not directly involved. If anything happens, I'll be the one blamed.
Sharon continued, scratching her head in frustration.
So it was my insurance. I thought if I insisted it was food and not garbage, my punishment would be lighter. So I didn't mind if you threw it away. But why are you telling me the truth now? A neighbor almost called the police. So I realized this was pointless. But Zeph is also scary, and I don't know what to do.
Sharon didn't seem to be lying. She seemed genuinely distressed, scratching her hair roughly. Seeing that, a fierce anger rose within me. I don't mind if Zeph hates me, and if it costs me my life, so be it. He can use my inheritance to pay off his debts or invest in his business as he pleases. If that satisfies Zeph, I can say I've fulfilled my duty as a parent. There isn't much more I can do for my son. However, I cannot forgive him for resorting to violence against his wife, Sharon, to implicate her in his own sins. I held Sharon's hand.
Sharon, thank you for telling me. Let's stop Zeph together.
But Verity, what can we do?
Don't worry, I have a plan.
With that, I immediately began preparations to help Sharon. First, I spoke to the neighbors to explain the situation and our upcoming act. I wanted to ensure they wouldn't be alarmed by any loud noises. Next, Sharon and I planned for her to film me while she hurled insults at me.
Verity, here we go.
With those words, Sharon threw a trash bag at me.
Take that! Stop it, don't!
We changed outfits to film multiple scenarios without Zeph noticing. It was surprisingly fun, and we ended up with more vivid footage than expected. Do you think this is enough?
Sharon, could you also film Zeph harassing you?
Sharon, seemingly enjoying herself, smiled broadly and agreed enthusiastically.
Hidden camera work, got it. I'll handle it.
Sharon returned to Zeph for now. Next, I decided to stage a desperate phone call to Zeph. I aimed to sound as distressed and at my limit as possible.
Zeph, I can't take it anymore. Please help me.
Of course, Zeph wouldn't genuinely be concerned. Each time he heard my anguished voice, he likely laughed at my suffering. After several fake calls, it was time for the final act.
Zeph, I don't want to live anymore. This will be my last call. I'm sorry for everything.
Even I was impressed by my own performance. Zeph seemed completely fooled by my act. He told Sharon,
"That old woman won't last much longer. We'll finally get the inheritance."
Naturally, Sharon recorded all of this. We successfully captured videos of him harassing her, securing all the evidence we needed. Sharon took the evidence and her essentials and sought refuge at my house. I had already informed her workplace of the situation, so Zeph's visit would be in vain. From my house, Sharon contacted a lawyer to file a complaint about Zeph's misconduct. A few days after filing the complaint, Zeph called me. As soon as I answered,
"Hey! Do you know where Sharon went?"
he barked.
"Oh, Zeph! I don't want to live anymore." "Shut up. I don't care about you." "Where is Sharon?" "I don't know. I haven't seen her."
It was clear over the phone that Zeph was frantic.
"Don't play dumb. She must be with you. I'm coming over."
About an hour later, Zeph actually showed up. From behind the door, he spoke in a suddenly gentle voice.
"Mom, it's been a while. Let me in. I brought some treats. Let's eat together."
He said that and showed a paper bag full of snacks to the monitor. A while ago, I might have believed him, but since I heard everything from Sharon, I knew his behavior was fake.
"Sharon isn't here." "Sorry, go home."
Not here? Then why doesn't Mom open the door? If she's not here, it's not a problem, right? Zeph kept talking in a gentlemanly manner. Indeed, his outward appearance seemed good.
"That's not it. The room is messy, so I can't open it." "Then I'll clean it up. So open the door."
No, I won't open it. Go home.
"Hey, you old hag, enough already."
Because I firmly refused, Zeph showed his true colors.
"You bastard, you have some nerve to defy me with that body. Prepare yourself."
Zeph lost his cool and started kicking the door with fierce force. The violent sound echoed through the room.
"Open up! Open the door! You old hag!"
The door was made of sturdy metal, so I didn't think it would open, but even so, Zeph's almost insane intensity was terrifying.
"I'm scared. What if the door gets broken down?"
Sharon had her hand on my shoulder, but I could feel she was trembling quite a bit. Sharon, call the police.
Understood.
While Sharon was calling the police, I spoke to Zeph.
"Zeph, it's useless to do this, so stop."
However, my words no longer reached his ears. After a while, I heard shouting from outside, and the sound of kicking stopped. Looking through the monitor, I saw several neighbors gathering. Zeph, being restrained by men, seemed unable to resist.
"Let go! Let go of me!"
But soon the police arrived and arrested Zeph. After confirming that, Sharon and I went outside to face Zeph.
"Hey, Mom. Tell these guys something." "Sorry, but everyone knows your true nature. Give up. Don't be ridiculous. It's your fault. My life is ruined because of you.
Zeph was taken away without apologizing to Sharon till the end. The neighbors also comforted me with kind words.
Thank you, Verity.
Sharon said that too and gently held my hand. After that, Zeph faced the consequences of his actions. Someone had recorded the incident and uploaded the video to the internet. The image of Zeph kicking the door and shouting spread quickly on social media, revealing his true nature to everyone. Because of that, all the misdeeds he committed in his student days, the cleverly hidden blackmail and fraudulent acts, were all exposed. Naturally, he lost his credibility in the community, his business failed completely, and Zeph had to pay huge compensation and debt repayment. Adding to his woes, Sharon asked for a divorce. The evidence she collected was decisive, and he had to pay a large alimony. 3 days ago, Zeph contacted me, saying he would come to my house after losing everything. In the meantime, I made a plan to get Zeph back on his feet. Please, Mom, help me. Zeph, who came to my house, said that and apologized deeply in front of me many times. I'm really sorry. I have no one else to rely on but you, Mom. Please do something. I'm sorry, Zeph. As your mother, I want to help you. But I'm in this condition, and I don't have enough savings. So I talked to your uncle. At that point, I called out to the uncle who was waiting in the back room. The door opened vigorously, and from there came out a scary-looking man with a shaved head and sunglasses. This man was in the construction business. He said he'd love to hire Zeph. Apparently, he was short-staffed. He wasn't just there for the job, but also as a precaution, like a bodyguard in case anything went wrong. Zeph made a face and stepped back, clearly displeased with my suggestion. But then, my uncle walked over and grabbed him by the collar. Come on, let's go. Don't worry, my workplace is in the mountains. You'll stay in a dorm there. There's nothing else around, so you'll be able to pay off your debt quickly. Now, get up. No, Mom! Zeph reached out to me, but sadly, his hand couldn't reach. He was taken away by my uncle. As I watched them leave, Sharon came out of the room where my uncle had been. It's unfortunate, but it can't be helped. Yes, but I'm sure Zeph will manage somehow. Even though Sharon had divorced Zeph, she was actually an orphan with no family to turn to. Why don't you live with me? I suggested, and she gladly accepted. Oh my, it's already this late. Verity, you have your class, right? I'll drive you since I'm heading out to job hunt. Since that incident, I started talking more with the neighbors. In the course of these interactions, I was encouraged to start a handmade craft class. At first, I was confused, but having done it for years, I had become quite skilled without realizing it. Now, I teach many students, and my income has surpassed what I made doing side jobs. All right, please do. With Sharon pushing my wheelchair, we left the house. We walked slowly through the warm early summer light. There was a time when the future seemed uncertain, but now, my days are bright and joyful.